The Democratic debate last night annoyed me greatly. CNN, first point, and not necessarily related to the story, but I'm going to say it either way, should not host these debates. There's a clear bias that permeates these debates. It's true that Warren got attacked a lot tonight, and so there was a certain amount of time that you would imagine would be warranted. It is also true that they gave her twice as much time as Sanders, who, by polling estimates, on his worst day, is maybe in third place and in many polls second or first. Warren has subsumed Joe Biden in the lead. And because she's subsumed Joe Biden in the lead, she's been getting a lot of attacks. But some of the questions and the way they ask the questions, and even the people they ask the questions to, were rather ludicrous. Elizabeth Warren did not write the Medicare for All bill. Bernie Sanders wrote that Medicare for All bill. If you were going to start a debate talking about Bernie Sanders, the person you would go to is Bernie Sanders. I am okay with it bouncing back to Warren if you want to ask her about this notion of taxes. But ultimately, if you're going to start it and you're going to have this kind of focal point on whether people agree or disagree with it, the person you would start with is the person who wrote the bill. And for Sanders' point, when it gets to you, you should make it clear that it is unconscionable that you would go to Warren on a bill that I wrote. He did it in an indirect way of I wrote the damn bill, but that's not enough. I'm sorry, that's not enough. I need you to be a bit more aggressive. Yes, I think Sanders did well in this debate. There are things that I want to talk about that I think he needs to improve upon, but otherwise I think he did well. But Warren was the person who took the most heat in this debate because everyone at this point knows that she is probably in the pole position, especially with the bump and the surge that she's been getting. I don't know the reality of how much that surge is. I do know that media has been lavishing a ton of blessings upon her, which gives her a pretty, it's kind of like on Star Trek in the original series. The women in Star Trek, if you ever notice, have a soft light. It's so soft. My wife was like, oh, look at the lighting. Yeah, this is kind of what they're doing to Warren. They're giving her that soft light. The debates are the areas where that soft light can be ripped off. And there are things that Sanders need to do to kind of get on that. But the other candidates, despite the fact that Sanders, for the most part, is still running with this truce, the other candidates have no truce with Warren, and they went after her whole hog. This video is not going to be about the whole hog where it was substantive. This is going to be the most ridiculous attack of the night. Kamala Harris, it seems that she's trying to rekindle that magic that she got in the first debate with Joe Biden, which immediately was torn down in the second debate when Tulsi Gabbard ended her presidential campaign in 60 seconds flat. She tries the same tactic with Warren, but instead of using something where she could say, I was one of those kids on that bus, Joe Biden, something to that effect, she has to go with something that's far less substantive, even ridiculous. This is going to be the most ridiculous attack of the night. And that particular award, goes to Kamala Harris. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content and you find yourself coming back often, please like, share, subscribe. Of course, you can support through PayPal Patreon. I have to say, this content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you for allowing me to do this. I say that because the channel is continuously demonetized. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Kamala Harris is desperate. I think that's fair to say. Ultimately, her donors are wondering, are you still relevant? And when asking that question, are you still relevant, to some degree, she has to have some level of an answer in the direction of yes. Because the problem is, the further you go into these weeks, the more money that you need to get. If you can't show your relevance, that you have a chance of winning, they will leave you and they will go to a candidate that's more relevant. Elizabeth Warren's a woman. She's not giving us everything we want, but Lord knows she's not Bernie Sanders. Fair game. Let's go. Kamala Harris has to show relevance, which means that she has to take every opportunity that she can to demonstrate. And in some cases, hope, maybe, some interaction, she can get a bump. This was not one of those interactions. This interaction was downright ridiculous, outright silly even. And if this is what her team was talking about in debate prep, she needs to fire her team. This was downright horrendous. She essentially went after Elizabeth Warren for Trump's Twitter account. She pushed saying, we need to get rid of Trump's Twitter account. We need to stop him from tweeting. Warren, from her standpoint, looked at this as what it was, silly, and didn't give it the time of day, and immediately went to something that was more substantive, which even annoyed me from the standpoint of Sanders, when Warren says, I'm with Bernie on campaign finance. Neither one of us are taking money. Now, that was not something she could have said in the first 3 debates. And Sanders, not creating distinction between the two, never brought it up as an issue. Warren, a couple of days after she says, you know what, I think I'm going to just do this grassroots thing going through. A couple of days in the debate, bam, there it is. Sanders and I, 1-to-1, baby. Neither one of us are taking cash. Ha ha! You could have did the exact same thing in the first 3 debates. You did not do that. She did in a whim, in a heartbeat, jumping on that opportunity. Kudos to Warren. Well played, miss. Kamala goes back to the Twitter thing, missing the point that Warren is gutting her, because Warren is making the point that you are taking a ton of cash from this companies that for the most part you're talking about and complaining about. It's weird. The Twitter thing is just bizarre. I'm going to let her make her argument substantive in a political sense, propagandistic sense, about Trump's tweeting and why the government or something, somebody of sorts with some level of authority should pressure with a hard fist Twitter to get rid of Trump's Twitter account and stop him from tweeting. This is an extraordinary exchange. And I have to be honest, Kamala Harris should be ashamed of herself.
What we're talking about is a grave injustice when rules apply to some but not equally to all, and in particular when the rules that apply to the powerless don't apply to the powerful. And so, Senator Warren, I just want to say that I was surprised to hear that you did not agree with me that on this subject of what should be the rules around corporate responsibility for these big tech companies, when I called on Twitter to suspend Donald Trump's account, that you did not agree, and I would urge you to join me, because here we have Donald Trump, who has 65 million Twitter followers, and is using that platform as the president of the United States to openly intimidate witnesses, to threaten witnesses, to obstruct justice. And he and his account should be taken down. We saw in El Paso that shooter in his manifesto was informed by how Donald Trump uses that platform. And this is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate accountability.
Thank you. Senator Warren, you can respond.
So, look, I don't just want to push Donald Trump off Twitter. I want to push him out of the White House. That's our job.
So join me in saying that his Twitter account should be shut down.
Let's figure out
No?
why it is that we have had laws on the books for antitrust for over a century, and yet for decades now. We've all called on how the big drug companies are calling the shots in Washington, big ag, how the gun industry, big tech. You know, we really need to address the elephant in the room, and that is how campaigns are financed.
You can't say you're for corporate responsibility if it doesn't apply to everyone.
I announced this morning that I'm not going to take any money from big tech executives, from Wall Street executives. We've already agreed, Bernie and I, we're not taking any money from big pharma executives. You can't go behind closed doors and take the money of these executives and then turn around and expect that these are the people who are actually finally going to enforce the laws.
Motherfucker! Are you serious? God damn it! Bernie Sanders. Bernie fucking Sanders. This riff, you could have said that in the first debate, in the second debate, and the third debate. And you could have aimed that at everybody on that stage, including Warren, saying, I am the only person that this applies to. Elizabeth Warren has literally come out this morning. It's like a person in the split second that they die, renounce all of their sins and pray for forgiveness and get to heaven and say, look, I renounce my sins, buddy. Yes, it was a split second ago, but at the very least I did it. That's effectively what she said. She says, look, this morning, just this morning, before this debate, I renounced my sins. Meaning, going forward, I am going to be grassroots funded. And I'm not going to take any money from these other sources. And so now that I've renounced my sins, Sanders and I, wink, wink, are the only people on the stage that this applies to. And I understand you're going after me for not being with you on this taking down Trump's Twitter account and everything. But my objective is A, to get Trump out of office, and B, to not take cash and regulate those industries using antitrust law, meaning sweeping this legislation that these corporate robots that are in office that are paid all of this cash to do favors for those particular corporations and to not imply certain laws and levers of government that could be applied to get what you want or that policy that's best for the public. Specifically, in this case, the antitrust legislation. She's saying, I'm going to use that to great effect to regulate these companies. And you can trust that I will do that because Sanders and I are not taking cash. That is literally an argument. Sanders could have taken everything that she said and just said that in the first, second, and third debate and aimed it at everybody on that stage. The notion, the goddamn notion, and again, kudos to Warren. In a political sense, cool fucking dose. I could not have asked for a better thing to be able to do if I was a candidate on that debate stage. The thing that she just did to Kamala Harris, who for some reason thought she got the better of that exchange in the way that she was smiling. That's an amazing riff. That's an amazing fucking riff. Hurts. Fucking hurts. Paging Bernie Sanders. Paging Bernie Sanders. She just usurped one of your major weapons. Oh, God.
We need campaign finance rules
Thank you,
and
Senator Warren.
practices
Senator Harris.
that support us all.
You can't, it does not represent a system of justice to say that the rules will apply differently to different people. This is a matter, you are saying, of holding big tech accountable.
Yes.
Holding big tech accountable because they have an outsized influence on people's perceptions about issues, and they actually influence behaviors. We all have to agree this is their power. It is immense.
Senator Klobuchar, let me bring you in here. Your response.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished. And so what I am saying is that it seems to me that you would be able to join me in saying the rule has to apply to Twitter the same way it does to Facebook.
Look, I think all of the rules should apply across the board. I don't have a problem with that.
So you will
what
join
I
me in
do
saying
have
Twitter
a
should shut down that
problem with
account.
is that if we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big tech, then we should ask if people are taking money from the big tech executives. If we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big drug companies, we should ask if people are financing their campaigns by taking money from big drug executives.
You know, the effectiveness of this is kind of in two parts, right? Like, it's so silly in what she's going after Elizabeth Warren about. And Warren is turning this, on the second part, into something that is actually substantial and goes beyond what Kamala Harris is talking about. Kamala Harris is talking about shutting down one account. Elizabeth Warren is talking about not necessarily shutting down companies, but breaking up companies. I would guarantee you this, between shutting down an account and being broken up by Warren using the antitrust legislation, they are far more terrified of what Warren is saying. I guess I'm making the point that Kamala Harris's fickle attack has been essentially pushed back on with a far more substantial attack. Not to mention, Kamala Harris will be taking money from those industries that Warren is pinning her on. Essentially making the point that all of this tough talk, at the end of the day, you're not going to do anything in real sense because you're going to be taking money from these exact same industries. And the fact that you're going to be taking money from those industries will mean that they have a tether in regards to your particular perception of the world. And she's right. She's right. And God knows, I wish Sanders, my video on Sanders will be next. And it will be soon. Look, something is true that we need to acknowledge. Our commons is not what it used to be. There's no town crier, and there's no guy on a soapbox belting belligerence to the world and the things that are, for the most part, false and wrong. That guy still is out there, but for the most part, the number of people that guy reaches minor in comparison to the new commons, which is YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these other things to which we use to communicate with one another through the digital space of the internet. That is the new way to which we engage the world. And as human beings, as a species that for the most part seeks a certain degree of interconnectedness, that has allowed it in somewhat of a way that goes beyond the physical in this kind of transhumanist way. And yet, it's there nonetheless. This new digital space that is our commons is owned by billionaires. These billionaires have a diffuse power, or that power is diffused through the various companies to which they own, be it Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, etc. And the way people receive their news is often through these social pages. What YouTube allows, what Google shows you, gives you a certain perception of the world. Because think about what you think of the world is. The people that you know, the things that they talk about, because you have nothing else to go by, what they show on the news, and also what you see on your feed, be it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. The companies themselves have a certain degree of outsized control because they control the device to which you get your content. If they decide that a certain content they don't particularly like, they can deprioritize that particular content and float up others. And there's no reason to believe that companies that have a political interest like anybody else may not move to do such things. Google was said to have changed the search results when you put in Hillary Clinton, her email stuff wouldn't show up. But if you went to DuckDuckGo, you would get a different result, a more accurate result. They have an outsized influence on our comments. I would go so far as to say these things nationalized may be a bit strong, but definitely regulated, extraordinarily so. There needs to be a certain degree of fairness in the way that these things are run, and they shouldn't necessarily be allowed this level of outsized influence. Kamala Harris's issue, however, is a bit different, right? Two thoughts. One, Bernie Sanders needs to give Kamala Harris a job. When Kamala Harris finally drops out the race, Bernie Sanders needs to give Kamala Harris a job. The level of dickishness that is associated with what she is talking about And this is partisan, political, outright, just dickishness. I want to stick my thumb in the eye of the president, and I know the president likes Twitter, so I am going to try to take his Twitter account away. All of this other stuff is ultimately 3 a.m. between her and her God, what I just said. I want to be a dick to Trump and take his Twitter account away. I can appreciate that level of dickishness. Hence, I think Bernie Sanders needs to give her a job in some department. Welcome to Section 31. I think she will be the person to help in that effort. The other part, whether we like it or not, whether we like what Trump tweets or not, the gravity of the office of the presidency demands and validates him having that account. Whether you like what Trump tweets or not, everything that he tweets, even the lies, even the smears, even, again, the dickishness to other world leaders, all of that stuff is relevant because he is the president of the United States. And he gets a wide berth in regards to what he tweets. Because again, by gravity of his office, it's relevant. This notion of taking away the president's Twitter account seems like nonsense to me. And I am one of those people that believe these platforms needs to be open in the language that they allow on the platforms. No, don't talk about killing and murder and that type of stuff. And I understand this notion of being hesitant of Nazis. And the rule set of the company can be written in such a way where you try to allow the widest possible thing in the safest possible way. That's not what we have in the way that certain accounts are taken off. For example, anti-war sites were taken off of Facebook at the behest of the Israeli government in some parts. I mean, this should not necessarily be something that happens from the standpoint of what we have as our new commons. I appreciate, I really do, honestly, appreciate, earnestly, no bullshit, heart to heart, fully, entirely appreciate the level of dickishness associated with what Kamala Harris wanted to do. I can feel it. It exudes from this particular conversation. However, this is silly. And Elizabeth Warren just owned you in this exchange because you said something silly to her and she knocked it back at you, and not just knocked it back at you, used it as an opportunity to give her campaign stuff. Meaning you were her stool by which she can espouse the fact that her and Sanders were the only ones on that stage not taking that cash. And that what you wanted was so minor and insignificant from the larger aspect of, I want to regulate these companies with antitrust laws, and you can believe that I'm going to do it because Sanders and I are the only ones on this stage that is not taking cash, and not taking cash allows us the freedom to do that. You're taking cash. So yeah, I understand you're in this Twitter account stuff, but the real issue has to do with using antitrust laws to regulate those industries, and the fact that you're taking that cash, you are probably not the person to do that. Silly. You wanted to pick a fight over anything. And the problem is, it's kind of like chess, right? Any premature attack, if it gets pushed back, will injure the person who initiated the premature attack. In this case, this attack was not just premature, it was just silly. And Warren essentially used you as a platform by which to espouse a new political message of antitrust laws and, ensuring that elections, well, she didn't go so far as to say elections are publicly funded. But she is talking about Citizens United and campaign finance laws and these type of things. She just used you as a platform to say that stuff. Sad. Like, share, subscribe. Think so. And by the way, clearly I don't support Warren. I go after her all the time. But her political strategy in this has been on point. her rise in the polls to some degree has been a test to that. And in some respect, in large part, in fact, it is because any attacks on Warren gets batted back by Warren and Sanders, because the attacks, for the most part, are not specific enough to create a delineation between the two. And Sanders doesn't take the opportunity to explain. What Warren said here in this video, Sanders could have said in any of those other debates, and he never took the opportunity to do it. And he would have gotten across to the American public, even if Warren would have later came out and did this campaign finance stuff. It would have still been stuck in the American consciousness that ultimately Warren is doing a gimmick in a game, and ultimately she's going to change into something else. You had a prime opportunity in those debates and you didn't do it. Do you really want to win this contest or not? That's what I want to know. Do you want to win it or not? In your heart, deep down, do you really want to be president of the United States? And if you do, why aren't you acting like it? Just saying. Like, share, subscribe.